Hello. Welcome to the Quantum Freedom Podcast. My name is Jordan. I bring to the table over 10 years of new thought and occult research. Today we are going to begin a series on Neville Goddard's 5 Lessons, starting with Lesson 1, Consciousness is the Only Reality. This is meant to be sort of a companion and commentary to Neville's 5 Lessons. I will link to his lessons in the description. I am attempting to make these lessons easier to understand and will hopefully be adding further insight from my studies. Neville says that this is going to be a very practical course. Therefore, I hope that everyone in this class has a very clear picture of what they desire, for I am convinced that you can realize your desires by the technique you will receive here this week in these 5 lessons. This may be controversial to some, but he says that the Bible has no reference at all to any persons who ever existed or to any event that ever occurred upon earth. To expand upon that, I believe the Bible did make references to real people and real events around the time of its writing, but I agree that the stories centered around individuals in the Bible itself may not have ever actually happened, but were created to convey thoughts, ideas, and perhaps instructions. I believe this is the key to making the Bible make actual useful sense to modern people. He places emphasis on the words we translate into God, also known as Jehovah, as well as Jesus. Neville claims to have studied the Jewish and Christian Kabbalah under an Ethiopian rabbi named Abdullah. The 22 Hebrew letters contain several meanings and associations of which I won't get too in-depth right now. What follows are Neville's interpretations of these Hebraic words and letters. God's name was spelled by the symbolic letters Yod He Vav He in Hebrew. Here, Neville breaks down the meaning of these individual letters. The first letter, Yod, represents a hand or seed. Not just any hand, but the hand of someone with authority. This is the builder's hand, the hand of the director. It directs and molds and builds within your world. The seed implied would be the seed or spark of creation. For those interested in the tarot, the letter Yod also corresponds with tarot key 9, the Hermit, in the Western mystery tradition. The second letter is He. If you look up what the letter He looks like in the Hebrew language, it looks like a window. The symbolic meaning of this is a window or an eyeball. He corresponds with tarot key 4, the Emperor. Vav, the third letter, represents a nail. A nail is literally and symbolically used to bind things together. It also means the word and in Hebrew. Vav corresponds with tarot key 5, the Hierophant. The fourth letter, He, is another window or eye. Going back to the first letter, Yod, is your I amness, your awareness of being aware. Out of this awareness, all states of awareness come. The second letter, He, which represents a window or eye, represents your imagination, your ability to perceive. You perceive something that seems to be other than self. Vav, the third letter, is your ability to feel you are already what you desire to be. If you feel that you are it, you become aware of being it, the thing desired. To mentally feel as if you are already what you want to be is to take your desire out of the imaginary world and bind it to yourself. You have completed the drama of creation, as Neville puts it. You are aware of something. You become aware of actually being the thing that you were aware of. The final letter in the name of God is another He, another window or eye. This means that the visible 3D world around you constantly shows you what you are aware of consciously being. It has nothing to do with the objective world. It molds itself to what you are conscious of being. In Scripture, this is the name by which all things are made. It is also your name, as you listen to these words. You are aware of being, and you are aware of something that is other than yourself, your home, your car, or wherever else you may be right now. This name also signifies that which was, that which is, and that which will be. With this knowledge, you can become selective. You have the ability to feel what it would be like if you were someplace else or had something else. If you assume that you are what you want to be, you have completed the name of God, Yod He Vav He. The manifestation or appearance of what you assume to be comes into view automatically as you assume consciousness of being it. Now, Neville talks about the sun's name. God gives the metaphorical sun dominion over the world. In Neville's cosmology, you are also the sun, the great Joshua, Yeshua, or Jesus of the Bible. All of those names mean the same thing. The sun's name is very similar to God's name in Hebrew. The first three letters are still Yod, He, Vav, but you add the Hebrew letters Shin and Ayin, which creates the name Yod, He, Vav, Shin, Ayin. Yod, He, Vav means you are aware of being aware. But when God becomes conscious of being man, he adds the letter Shin. Shin symbolizes a tooth or teeth. Teeth are something which consumes or devours. Shin also represents a flame or fire. Neville says this Shin or tooth gives the sun absolute dominion. Shin corresponds with Tarot Key 20, Judgment. In this lesson, I notice Neville didn't go into the meaning of Ayin, so I will add some context. Ayin also means eye or eyes in Hebrew, symbolizing perception, vision, and insight. It can also relate to springs or fountains, implying a flow of wisdom or divine sustenance. Ayin corresponds with Tarot Key 15, the Devil. This may be a hint that appearances deceive, are not final, and the world we see around us is just but a shadow of the imagination. So we use our imagination, judgment, and the other meanings of these Hebrew letters to change our circumstances. Now, Neville asks, why can't Shin be in the Father's name? For this reason. Nothing can cease to be in the Father. Even unwanted or negative things cannot cease to be. If God gives a thing expression, it remains forever locked in the dimensionally greater self, which is the Father. But we would not like to keep alive within the world all of our mistakes. So us, in God's mercy, gave to ourselves when we became man the power to become detached from these things that we, in our ignorance, brought to manifest in our world. If you become detached in consciousness from being where you're at by turning your attention away from it, then you are no longer conscious of it. Something in you devours it within you. It can only be in your present reality if you keep it alive within your consciousness. In case it isn't clear, I want to clarify that when Neville says God became man, he of course means all of mankind, men, women, non-binary people, trans people, and not men only. Hopefully that is obvious. These two metaphorical names give you dominion. You have dominion if you know that your consciousness is God, the one and only reality. You become aware of a desire. You have the ability to feel that you already have what you desire, where before it was only imaginary. When the result manifests into your world, it comes to fruition in a way that no one knows. You are both Yod He Vav He and Yod He Vav Shin Ayin. The stories of the Bible are a metaphorical instruction manual for how to pray, how to change the future and your reality. The stories are psychological dramas, not historical facts. What is God? God is our consciousness, awareness, our I amness. What happens in your life is a result of your concept of yourself. If you had a different concept of yourself, you would act differently and have different experiences. By assuming the feeling of your wish being fulfilled, you alter your future in harmony with that assumption. For assumptions, though false, if sustained, will harden into fact. An undisciplined mind finds it difficult to assume a feeling of the wish being fulfilled when your senses show you otherwise. Ancient teachers discover that a relaxed, meditative, or trance-like state assists you in being able to change your assumptions and imagine your wish being fulfilled. Because of this, Neville tells us that the writers of the Bible dramatized the first creative act as one in which humanity is in a profound sleep. This sets the pattern for all future created acts and shows us that mankind has one thing in which they use to create their world. That is themselves. The Bible uses sexuality to describe the mental creative act that causes change to manifest in our world. There is a phallic frame used in the Bible. In the Bible, they use the word thigh. When they refer to the phrase thigh of a man, they are really referring to a man's genitals. When they refer to this, they mean it metaphorically and psychologically. An angel is a messenger of God. you are God. You have discovered your consciousness is God. You have an idea, which is a message from yourself. You wrestle with the idea, not knowing that you are already the idea which you contemplate, and you have a hard time believing that you can become that idea. The psychological character that wrestles with the angel is Jacob. The name Jacob means supplanter. A supplanter is someone or something that takes the place of another, usually by force, cunning, or strategy. When you wrestle with your ideal, attempting to feel that you are already that ideal, supplanting is what happens. When you actually feel that you are the idea, something goes out of you. To quote scripture, you could say, "Who has touched me? For I perceive virtue has gone out of me." After successfully meditating on becoming your ideal, you become incapable of continuing in the act, as though it were a physical creative act. Neville refers to it vaguely since he couldn't talk about it really plainly in his era, but he metaphorically likens this to a mental orgasm or ejaculation. After orgasm, you are satisfied and no longer hunger after the desire. You are just as satisfied after you have prayed successfully as you are after a physical orgasm. If the hunger or thirst for that satisfaction still exists, you did not, quote, explode the idea from within you, and you did not yet succeed in becoming conscious of being that which you wanted to be. When you pray, believe that you have received, and you shall receive. When the physical creative act is completed, the male genitalia shrinks, and man finds himself impotent or is halted. In like manner, when a person prays successfully, they believe that they are already that which they desire to be. Therefore, they cannot continue desiring to be that which he is already conscious of being. At the moment of satisfaction, physical and psychological, something goes out, which in time bears witness to mankind's creative power. The next story Neville references is the 38th chapter of the book of Genesis. Here is a king whose name is Judah. The first three letters, which also begins Yod He Vav. Tamar is his daughter-in-law. Neville says Tamar means a palm tree, something beautiful, graceful, stately, and desirable. A palm tree in the desert signals an oasis. It suggests the thing longed for in a dry, barren place. In other words, Tamar represents the objective itself, the beautiful thing desired by consciousness. Here there is also a connection to the symbolism of tarot key 2, the high priestess. There are palm trees imprinted in the veil of the background of the high priestess tarot card. In the biblical story, Tamar veils herself like a harlot and sits in a public place. Judah sees her and desires her. He promises her a young goat. Neville uses the word kid here, which is an older term for a goat. But before she gives herself to him, she asks for a pledge. She asks for Judah's ring, his bracelets, and his staff. These are not random objects. They are symbols of his authority, identity, and kingship. Judah gives them, goes in unto her, and she conceives. Neville's interpretation is that mankind has only one thing they can truly give in the act of creation, and that is themselves. You cannot create by merely admiring what you want, talking about what you want, or associating with people who already have what you want. You must give yourself to the state desired. You must mentally and emotionally surrender your present identity and assume the feeling of already being or having the thing desired. So if I want security, I cannot get it by merely chasing circumstances that look secure. I must become conscious of being secure. If I want health, I cannot depend only on pills, climate, or diet in the deeper psychological sense Neville means. I must assume the feeling of being healthy. If I want dignity, success, or elevation in life, I must mentally walk in consciousness as though I already am that. This is what Judah giving Tamar his ring, bracelets, and staff symbolizes. The king gives his very self to the desired state, and when he does, Tamar bears a child. In Neville's language, that means the assumption becomes objectified. The inner state takes on flesh. The world eventually reflects what your consciousness has conceived. So Neville says you are both Judah and Tamar. You are Judah as the one who gives himself to a state, and you are Tamar as the state desired, the beautiful objective held before the mind. When you unite with that state by feeling that you already are it, you crystallize it in the world around you. This is a key point Neville keeps repeating. All of these Bible characters live within the individual. They are not really separate people in history, but personifications of states and functions within consciousness. The story is showing you how to pray, how to imagine, and how to embody a desire until it becomes fact. The third interpretation is the story of Isaac and his two sons, Esau and Jacob, mainly referenced in Genesis chapter 27. This is a story Neville references quite a bit in his lectures. It is the famous scene where the blind father blesses the second son instead of the first. Neville places special emphasis on the fact that this deception happens through feeling. Isaac is old and blind. He calls for Esau, the rough and hairy son, and asks him to go out hunting and bring him venison. But Jacob, the smooth-skinned son, overhears this. Wanting the birthright and the blessing for himself, he takes a hairy-skinned pelt from one of the flock and covers himself so that when his father touches him, he feels like Esau. Isaac says, "Come near, so I may feel whether you are really my son Esau or not." Jacob comes close. Isaac hears Jacob's voice, but when he touches him, the hands feel like Esau. So Isaac gives the blessing to Jacob. Neville says that this is not really a story about ancient people, but about your own consciousness. You are Isaac, and you are also both sons. Isaac is your awareness in a blind state, meaning you are unable to see the desired thing with your physical eyes. Esau represents your present visible world, the rough, solid sensory reality that seems to be true because your senses testify to it. Jacob represents the state you want to occupy instead. Jacob is the smooth-skinned state, the desired reality, the supplanter that takes the place of what currently seems real. If you are sitting in a room and do not want to be in that room, the room itself is Esau. It is the present environment. It is the world your senses report as fact. But the place you want to be instead, or the state you want to occupy instead, is Jacob. Neville says you do not change Esau by denying him. You do not send the visible world away by saying it does not exist. That only makes it more real to you. Instead, you remove your attention from what the senses are telling you and you place it upon the state you want to make real. The secret, according to Neville, is to bring the desired state here, not to think of it as far away or to think of it as something that may happen later, but to bring it into the present moment in imagination until it feels real. Neville's example is imagining a piano in the room. It is not enough to vaguely picture a piano somewhere else. You must imagine it here and now and feel it as though it were solidly present. This is what it means for Jacob to come before Isaac, disguised as Esau. You take the unseen state and bring it so close in imagination that it feels objectively real. Isaac is blind because he cannot see with the physical eye, but he can still feel. In the same way, you may not be able to see your wish fulfilled with your physical senses, but you can feel it to be real inwardly in imagination. Then Neville points out something important. As soon as Isaac blesses Jacob, Esau returns from the hunt. In practical terms, the moment you finish imagining and open your eyes, the old world is still there. The same room is still there. The same circumstances are still there. The senses immediately tell you that you have deceived yourself. This is where the discipline comes in. Neville says you must not take back the blessing. Once you have given reality to the imagined state, once you have felt it to be real, you must remain faithful to that inner act. You do not revoke it just because outer appearances contradict it. So the lesson here is that feeling gives the blessing. Feeling transfers the right of birth from the current sensory world to the desired state. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain loyal to it, Jacob has received the blessing. And once that happens, the outer world must eventually rearrange itself to reflect what was first made real in consciousness. The fourth story Neville references is taken from the last chapter of Deuteronomy, chapter 34. This is the story of Moses going up from the plains of Moab unto Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah, over against Jericho. This is more than just a strange final scene in Moses' life. Neville sees it as one of the clearest symbolic instructions in the Bible for how to realize a desire. Neville first points out something interesting. Tradition says Moses wrote the books attributed to him, yet in Deuteronomy 34, we have what amounts to Moses writing his own obituary. He dies, is buried, and no man knows where his grave is unto this day. Neville uses this to make a practical point. You must learn how to metaphorically let your old state die so completely that no one can find where the old self was buried. If you were once sick and become well, where is the sick person buried? If you were once poor and then become prosperous, where is the poor man buried? Neville's answer is that a true change in consciousness erases the old identity so fully that you cannot point to it anymore. The old state becomes untraceable because you are no longer mentally giving it life. Then Neville begins breaking down the names in the verse. The name Moses means to draw out, to rescue, to lift out, to fetch. So Moses symbolizes the power in you that can draw out from within yourself whatever you seek to express outwardly. In other words, what you want does not come from outside, it is drawn out from your own consciousness. The word Moab comes from words mem and ab, meaning mother-father. This represents your awareness itself, your I amness, the generative source. Your consciousness is the mother-father. It is the womb and seed together. Everything you will ever experience is drawn from that inner source. The Hebrew letter mem also means water and is associated with Tarot Key 12, the Hanged Man. Nebo means prophecy. A prophecy is something not yet visible as fact, but held as a possibility, an image, or a promise in the mind. This is your desire, your wish, the thing you want to be or experience, but is not yet objectively realized. Nebo is called a mountain because it appears high, difficult, and perhaps impossible from the standpoint of your current self. The word Pisgah means to contemplate. So you go to the top of Pisgah, so to go up to the top of Pisgah is to contemplate your desire from the right level of consciousness. Jericho, Neville says, means a fragrant odor. That might sound strange at first, but his point is that when you properly contemplate the desired state and actually feel yourself to be it, it produces a kind of inner satisfaction, a sweetness, a joy, a sense of contemplation. That satisfying inner reaction is Jericho. Then he brings in Gilead, which he says means the hills of witnesses, and Dan the prophet. The witnesses are the people, circumstances, and condition of your outer world that eventually bear witness to the state you have assumed within. In other words, if you remain faithful inwardly, the world around you will testify to it. So putting it all together in a practical way, Neville is saying this. First, define your desire. That is your Nebo. Then contemplate it. Climb Pisgah by dwelling on your desire inwardly until you feel the satisfaction of it being fulfilled. Do not stop at vague wishing. Contemplate until you actually feel the reality of the wish fulfilled. When that feeling comes, Jericho has been reached. Once you have done that, you do not need to force the outer result. You do not need to manipulate the world, strain, or worry about the how. Gilead, the hills of witnesses, will take care of that. The outer world will bear witness in its own way and in its own time. This ties directly into Moses' death and burial. If you assume the new state fully, you metaphorically let the old state die. You do not drag the old self along with you. You do not keep revisiting it, explaining it, defending it, or looking back at it. You let the dead bury the dead, as Scripture says. The old man is gone. That is why you should not ask how it will happen. Do not look back. Do not keep digging up the grave of the former self. If you remain faithful to the new concept of yourself, the old self will be so thoroughly buried that neither you or anyone else will be able to find it again. Neville also comments on Moses being 120 years old at the time of his death. This is symbolic numerology rather than history. 1 plus 2 plus 0 equals 3, and 3 is the number of expression, manifestation, or multiplication. For those interested in tarot symbolism, 1, the magician, plus 2, the high priestess, plus 0, the fool, equals 3, the empress. Moses, at age 120, represents a full awareness of expression. Scripture says Moses' eye was not dim, nor natural force abated. In other words, this is not a weak or fading state. It is a state of full conscious vitality. The point Neville seems to make is that you may be fully conscious and fully alive in your present state, even if it is not the state that you want. But if you know the law, you can still metaphorically let the old concept of self die and assume a new one, allowing a different expression to take form in your world. So Moses and Nebo are not just about a prophet on a mountain. They are about your own ability to draw a new reality out of consciousness, contemplate it until it feels real, and then die so completely to the former state that the new one can take its place without obstruction. These are the stories Neville presented. You must apply them every day of your life. Even if the chair in which you're seated seems hard and distracts you from meditation, you can, by imagination, make it the most comfortable chair in the world. Consciousness is the one and only reality, so we must form the object of our desire out of our own consciousness. Neville emphasizes the importance of creating a state akin to sleep in order to aid you into mentally assuming that which reason and your physical senses deny. The state akin to sleep is also known in the online manifesting community by the acronym SATS, or SATS. In today's language, the state akin to sleep just means a meditative, daydream-like sleep. You can enter this state using modern techniques such as guided meditation or breathwork. Now we come to the main event, Neville's manifestation technique he mentions over and over again in his books and lectures. This is a simple formula for changing the future, which was discovered by the ancient teachers and given to us in the Bible and other sacred texts. This formula can be proved by all. The first step in changing the future is desire. That is, define your objective. Know definitely what you want. Second, mentally think of and construct an event which you believe would happen after the fulfillment of your desire. An event which implies fulfillment of your desire, something which will happen to you in the first person. The third step is to immobilize the physical body and induce a state akin to sleep. Then mentally feel yourself right into the proposed action, imagining all the while that you are actually performing the action here and now. You must participate in the imaginary action, not merely stand back and look on, but feel that you are actually performing the action so that the imaginary sensation is real to you. It is important to remember that the action must be one which follows the fulfillment of your desire, an event that implies fulfillment. He gives the example of desiring a promotion at work. Being congratulated would be an event which you would experience following the fulfillment of a promotion. Having selected the action of being congratulated as one you will experience in imagination to imply a promotion at work, immobilize your body in a chair or bed. Then induce a state bordering on sleep, a drowsy or relaxed state, but one in which you can still control the direction of your thoughts, a state which you are attentive without effort. Then visualize a friend standing before you. Put your imaginary hand into theirs. Feel it to be solid and real, and have an imaginary conversation with them in harmony with the feeling of having already been promoted. Do not imagine this in third person. Do not imagine this happening somewhere else. Do not imagine this happening in the future. Instead, you mentally make elsewhere here and the future now. The difference between feeling yourself in action here and now and visualizing yourself in action in the third person as though you were on a movie screen is the difference between success and failure. Neville demonstrates this difference by having you visualize climbing a ladder. With your eyelids closed, imagine that a ladder is right in front of you and feel yourself actually climbing it. His experience taught him to restrict the imaginary action to that which implies the fulfillment of the desire. Condense the idea into a single act and to reenact it over and over and over again until it has the feeling of reality. Otherwise, your attention may wander off and you will find yourself imagining all sorts of things other than you desire. For instance, if your mental action is to climb a particular flight of stairs, because that event is likely to follow the fulfillment of your desire, then you must restrict the mental action to climbing that flight of stairs. If your attention wanders off, bring it back to its task of climbing that flight of stairs, and keep doing so until the imaginary action has solidity and distinctness of reality. Personally, I find this technique easier if you start by only committing 5 minutes twice daily to your imaginal act, one at night before going to sleep, and one in the morning before getting out of bed. If you commit to this, you will find that you will develop your imagination very quickly, and you will more easily be able to imagine your desired act at will. The idea must be maintained with minimal effort on your part. With minimum effort, permeate the mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Drowsiness or a daydream-like state facilitates change because it favors attention without effort. This leads us to another technique known as the lullaby method. First, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then, in a relaxed and drowsy state, repeat over and over again, like a lullaby, any short phrase which implies fulfillment of your desire, such as, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," as though you are addressing a higher power for having given you your desire. With your eyes closed and your body still, induce a state akin to sleep and enter into the action as though you were an actor playing the part. Experience in imagination what you would experience in the flesh if you already had the thing which you desire. Make elsewhere here and then now. Then the greater you, using a larger focus, will call forth means and ways to bring into physical reality the new state which you have assumed. At this point, Neville says you are relieved of all responsibility to make your desire happen, because as you imagine and feel that your desire is so, your dimensionally larger self determines the means. He gives reassurance that no one will have to be injured or disappointed to make your desire a reality. You ask, if I get what I want, will it not imply injury to another? There are positive ways you know not of, so do not be concerned. When you are finished with this episode, if you are able, I invite you to close your eyes and go into 5 minutes of silence. Contemplate, imagine, and feel that you are what you want to be. When you finish, you will be that which you have assumed to be. Do not discuss your desire with anyone. You can't think about how it is going to happen when you know that you already have that which you desire. Do not look to anybody for encouragement. If you have doubt, it has already come. Go about your regular business and let the thing which you desire come to you. I hope that you have enjoyed this podcast episode. I would like to keep making more, so I will be putting links in the description and maybe getting a Patreon set up where you can support me, which will help me make more of these with better production value and all of that. So thank you once again for listening, and happy imagining.